welcome to today's class. For today, there are no props required. So whenever you have your space to practice in, we're gonna go ahead and meet in child's pose at the back of your mat. And we're gonna work our way into this space. We're not gonna come into it right away. So feel free to keep your toes tucked, work through the soles of the feet a little bit. And don't even come all the way down with your chest just yet. Just work your way into the soles of the feet. Feel that connection, bringing the hips back and down towards the heels. Tucking all of your toes underneath you. Stretching into that space. Working your way in and out of it. So coming back into more of a hands and knees position before bringing your hips back down towards the heels. And keep moving forward and back into that space. If you have tightness within the soles of the feet, this might feel intense right off the bat, but it might feel nice to work into this space. Keeping the knees a little bit wider than the hips, giving yourself some space to sink back. And then go ahead, when you come up onto the hands, go ahead and bring the knees a little bit wider, untuck the toes, allow the big toes to touch, and then slowly sink the hips back down towards the heels. Maybe coming down onto your forearms, shifting your weight side to side, allowing the hips to settle into this space that you've created, this little window between the thighs. And then go ahead and slowly walk the hands towards the top of the mat, keeping the hips nice and low. Reaching the tailbone back behind you towards the back edge of the mat. And then slowly allow the chest, the forehead to rest down towards your mat. Maybe wiggling the fingertips a little bit closer towards the top edge. And to keep the sides of the body nice and long, all the way from the hip crease towards the fingertips. Create a little bit more space for your breath to really fill up the entirety of the rib cage. With every inhale, sending your breath left to right, even towards the back of the rib cage, and then exhale, trying to expel all of that air all the way through to the bottom of the lungs. And take another 4 rounds of breath here. Trying to create a little bit more space with every inhale. And trying to settle into your shape with every exhale. Go ahead and start to feel a gentle grip underneath the palms of the hands, gripping the fingertips into the mat. And on your next inhale, you're going to start to pull through the hands, rounding the back, lifting the hips off the heels. So you're going to come up into a tabletop, or through a tabletop position, through a cat, rounding the spine. We're going to unravel towards the top of the mat. So the big toes are going to come away from one another. The hips are going to fall down towards the earth. Shoulders come over wrists. Unraveling into a high cobra. Top of the mat. Exhale. Press through the heels of the hands, lift the hips. Starting to round back through that cat pose. Big toes come back together to touch, coming back into child's pose. Inhale, pull the body forward, rounding through that cat pose, allowing the big toes to come away from one another. And then once the shoulders come over wrists, the hips fall. Pull the chest and heart forward, opening the body up into high cobra. And then on the exhale, sending the hips back in space, maybe moving through a cow pose. Finding a gentle arch of the spine until the hips come back towards the heels, child's pose. We're gonna go through a few more rounds of this, so move the spine in whatever way feels good. So moving forward through a cat, and then maybe moving backward through a cow pose. Again, have some freedom with it to create some movement, open up some space. On the next inhale, pull the body forward. Take it nice and slow, unraveling the body until you arrive at high cobra at the top of the mat. Really lift through the low belly, create space through the front body. And then exhale, send the hips back. Child's pose. Keeping the hands anchored into the earth. Inhale, pull forward. Exhale, sit the hips back. One more round, inhale. Linger as long as you need. Open up through the front body. Maybe finding a little lift through the legs. Starting to turn on a little bit more energy if that suits you today. And then exhale, sit the hips back. Settle into your child's pose. Really walk those fingertips towards the top. Really stretch the body out. Maybe find that shimmy side to side and let the hips settle. Create space for your belly to fall between the thighs. And go ahead and come on up into a tabletop position. Bring the knees underneath the hips. A few rounds of cat-cow here. So on the next inhale, go ahead and allow the belly to fall. Sit bones lift towards the sky. Maybe roll the shoulders back and down as you pull the chest and heart forward. Gaze lifts. Exhale, round. Create space within the upper back. Curl the tailbone underneath you. Round. Inhale. Lift the sit bones. Belly falls. Chest pulls forward. Exhale, round. Inhale. Finding that arch through the low back, the mid back, and the upper back as you pull the chest and heart forward. Shoulder blades down the back body. Exhale, round. Create space, rounding length through the back body. One more round, inhale. Exhale. Inhale back towards center. Find a nice strong connected core, supported spine. On the inhale, right leg is going to lift back behind you, strong through all 3 points of contact. And then go ahead and kickstand the left shin over towards the left side. Spin the hips over towards the right as the right arm lifts towards the sky. Pause here for just a moment and then drop the right leg towards the back of the mat. Reach the right arm up and overhead towards the front of the mat, coming into a gate pose. Bumping the right rib cage up towards the sky, reaching through the fingertips. Anchor down through the outer blade of that right foot to really create as much length as you can through the right side of the body. And then go ahead and spin everything down. Keep that reach of the right fingertips towards the top of the mat. Really create length through the right side of the body. Right hand plants. Left foot comes back to starting point. Right foot meets the left. Working our way onto the opposite side. Strong through your 3 points of contact, hands in right shin. Top of the right foot is grounded. Lift the left leg, stay strong and steady. Kickstand the right leg over towards the right. Start to open the hips over towards the left as the left arm lifts and reach up and over towards the sky. Pause here. Drop the back leg. Reach the left arm up and overhead. Really bump the left rib cage up towards the sky. Anchor down through the outer blade of the left foot. Stay connected. And then find that reach of the left fingertips up and over towards the top of the mat. Open up through the left side. Keep that reach of the left hand as it comes back down to meet the right. Bring the right foot back to neutral. Left foot meets the right. Tuck the toes. Press the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Go ahead and pedal the feet right away. Moving the hips left to right, work your way through the back line of the legs. But maybe staying static feels good here. Maybe you like that continuous long hold stretch. Maybe that feels good here in this moment. And feel free to keep the soft bend in the knees as you lift the hips up and towards the sky. Staying strong through the hands, working your way through the upper back. And then find 3 breaths here. Again, finding stillness, finding movement, whatever feels good. Exploring what you need in your body here in this moment. And then go ahead and drop the knees, tabletop. Knees under hips, wrists underneath shoulders. And then from here, strong through the heels of the hands, grounded through the left shin, top of the left foot. Inhale, lift the right leg back behind you. Pause here. Right heel comes towards your bottom. So bending that right knee. And then go ahead and start to open the knee towards the right side of the room. So you're like opening the hip, doing like a fire hydrant. Try to keep your hips nice and steady. So find that opening and then drive the right knee towards your right armpit. And then open that right hip a little bit more to plant the right foot outside the right hand. Keep that right foot right where it is and then start to walk the left toes back behind you. Open through the hips. Allow your hips to settle down into this space. Left knee stays down. Still staying lifted within the chest. Maybe find a sway back and forth with that right knee. Trying to wiggle into your space a little bit. Ground down through that right big toe so the sole of the foot is connected down towards the earth. And then go ahead and inhale, reach that right arm up towards the sky as you spin the chest towards the right side of the room, finding a little bit of a twist. Through the belly. Staying strong through that left hand so that you're nice and lifted through the torso. Right hand comes back down to the earth. Send the hips back, coming into half splits pose. Lifting the right toes towards the sky as you sit the hips back in space. Keep a soft bend in that right knee so that we're working through the back line of the leg. Keeping that focus there. And then in this space, play with turning the toes out towards the outer edge of the mat. Keeping the hips right where they are, like you're turning that right thigh bone in the socket, in the hip. And you'll feel how that sensation changes within the back line of the leg, working different muscles. See what feels good. Maybe there's a spot that you'd like to linger in. And go ahead and pause there. And then maybe walking the hands outside that right leg. Staying high up on the fingertips, keeping those hips reaching back behind you, keeping that right hip reaching towards the back edge of the mat. Maybe those toes fall out to explore a stretch within the outer lining of the right thigh, maybe a little bit more so than the back. Changing up the sensation. Hands come back inside the right foot. Plant the right foot back down. Come into that low lunge. Maybe come up onto the fingertips. And then go ahead and plant the hands. Go ahead and lift the right foot back up from the mat. And then we're reversing that movement. So coming back through that fire hydrant to bring the right knee back to meet the left. Go ahead and recalibrate, press your hips up and back, downward facing dog. Just for a breath or so. Maybe feel how one side feels a little bit different than the other as we try to create a little bit more space through the legs, through the hips. And then go ahead and drop the knees. Knees come underneath the hips, shoulders over wrists. Strong 3 points of contact, so pressing through the heels of the hands. Grounded down through the right shin, top of the right foot. Inhale, left leg lifts. Hips stay nice and squared off. Left heel comes in towards your bottom. And then open that right knee into that fire hydrant, opening through that hip. Drive the left knee in towards that armpit. Feel that connection or that activation. And then bring the left foot nice and slow outside the left hand. Pause here, keep that space. And then walk the right toes back towards the back of the mat. Letting the hips fall heavy, open up, settle in. And you can stay on the palms of your hands, or if you need to create a little bit more of a lift, come up onto the fingertips. And then again, swaying side to side, opening, closing that left knee. Trying to find a little bit more depth, a little bit more opening into the hips. And go ahead and ground back down into that left big toe so the sole of the foot is connected in towards the earth. And then go ahead and send the hips back. Lift the left toes. Coming into that half splits pose. And feel free to work your way into it. And this is more of a closed off shape to be stretching through the back line of the legs. So feel free to bend and straighten into that left knee until you find that sweet spot that you're able to maintain. But knowing that you don't have to go all the way to straight. If you find a soft bend in that knee, it allows you to access that lift, that reach of the hips back behind you with a little bit more ease. And then feel free from that space, like we did on the other side, slowly turning the entirety of the leg out and in, seeing how that changes the sensation. Again, the movement is coming from deep within the hip, so that you're not putting any unnecessary stress on the knee or having that rotation come from lower down in the leg. It's coming all from that hip, turning everything out and in, and working through that space, pausing in a space that feels good, seeing how that changes, where you're feeling the sensation. And then go ahead and walk the hands outside that left leg, staying up high onto the fingertips. Keep reaching that left hip towards the back edge of the mat. And maybe turning those toes towards the outer edge, opening up through that hip a little bit. It might create more space for your body to move into this little side bend here.
And then also change the sensation within the hip. Maybe feeling a stretch alongside the outer edge of the thigh. And then slowly walk your hands back inside that left foot. Left foot plants. Pausing that low lunge. And plant the hands. And then press through the heel of the hands, lift that sole of the left foot, hugging that left knee in, and then slowly reversing that movement, making a big old circle back to bring that left knee to meet the right. Bring the knees nice and wide, big toes to touch, sit the hips back, child's pose. Maybe find a wiggle or two to really allow those hips to settle as low as they are able. And then go ahead and plant the forearms. Go ahead and snake your body forward so that you come onto your belly. Wiggle the hips side to side, rest your forehead on the palms of your hands. And then go ahead and come up onto your forearms. Come into Sphinx pose. So hip bones, hip points stay anchored onto the earth. And then gentle press through the forearms to pull the chest and heart forward. Shoulder blades are down the back body, creating space within the chest. And then from here, go ahead and bring the right knee towards the outer edge of the mat on the right side. So that knee is going to be even with the hip. So you're coming into like a 90-90 on that right side. And you're trying to keep the hip points anchored down towards the floor. When the right leg comes into this space, that right hip is gonna wanna lift. So to create a little bit more space in this shape, keep encouraging that right hip point to stay anchored down in towards the earth. Feeling that opening through the inner lining of the right thigh. Staying lifted up onto the forearms. Or if this feels a little bit more too intense, you can always rest down, bringing the forehead back down to the backs of the hands. Explore a space that feels good for you. Don't force anything that feels otherwise. Two more breaths. Nice and slow, go ahead and just slide that leg back to meet the left. Press through the forearms, pull the chest and heart through. And then go ahead and find that shape on the other side. So just sliding that knee out and open so that the knee becomes parallel or even with the left hip. Inner lining of the left foot is down. And again, coming into this shape, if you're tight within the hips, your hips may want to lift, or you feel like you might not be able to get that knee all the way up. That's okay. Stay in a space that feels good, that feels accessible. And in a space where you're able to comfortably work towards keeping that left hip point onto the earth or directed into that space as evenly as you are able. So you feel a nice sensation within the inner thigh, within the groin. And you might feel a little bit more intensity in this lifted space. So you can either stay here, or if coming down onto your belly, resting the forehead onto the hands, that's always an option. Just trying to actively keep that left hip down. Even if you're unable, that action, that intent is still creating space within the shape. And slowly slide the left leg back to meet the right. Maybe wiggle the hips side to side. And then go ahead, come back down onto the forehead. Go ahead and bring left fingertips towards the outside edge of the mat, right arm into a capital T. And then go ahead and lift, keeping the hip points anchored, lift the left leg. And then go ahead and slowly spin over towards the left as the left leg drops behind the right. So you're stretching, you might feel a stretch within the right shoulder, gentle twist through the spine. Maybe you're feeling a stretch within the outer edge of the left hip. Come on back through center. Switch sides, so fingertips on the right side, left arm is in a capital T. Hip points anchored, lift that right leg just to a hover, and then slowly roll onto that left hip as you go ahead and turn the body towards the right. Right leg falls back behind you. Come on back. Hips back down towards the earth. Hands underneath the shoulders. Press yourself up and back into child's pose, back of the mat. Maybe knees come a little bit closer together so you have a little bit of support for the belly to rest on this time around. Allowing your low back to find a little bit of rounding in this space. Go ahead and walk your hands back towards your knees. Come up into a kneeling position, just to go ahead and start to transition onto your back. Take your time. Lower all the way down, nice and slow. Get there at however you need to. Bring the feet slightly wider than the hips, and slowly windshield wiper the knees side to side. But take it slow, go as far as you can in each direction. Maybe being a little bit more active in these transitions. So as you go from one side to the next, that leading leg. So if you're going from right to left, that left leg starts to lift, driving that left knee open, 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 trying to keep that right leg anchored for as long as you can until it has no other option but to lift. So you feel that space within the inner thighs. And you're keeping that space until the left knee falls, the right knee follows. Drawing that right knee towards the top left corner to open up through that right hip, the right side body. And then reverse that motion. That right knee starts to drive up towards the sky, opening towards the right, drive, drive, drive. Try to create as much space until the left knee has no other option but to lift. And then you keep that opening until the right knee settles, then the left knee follows. Drawing that left knee towards the top right corner. Opening through the left side. And then just move as slowly as you like through these two spaces. You can still have that activation, but move with a little bit more pace. And then go ahead and find your way back towards center. Wiggle the feet parallel towards one another. Arms alongside your body. Go ahead and scoop the tailbone underneath you. Back is flat towards the mat. And then slowly curl and lift the hips up from the floor. So you're coming into a bridge pose, but it doesn't have to be a super big lift. It's not a back bend. Just enough to open through the front of the hips. So it's a nice low lift from your mat. Keeping the tailbone scooped underneath you. Feeling the back line of the body helps support your shape. And then slowly lower all the way down towards the earth. Go ahead and bring your knees in towards your chest. Maybe rock side to side. Take happy baby if you'd like. And then eventually we're gonna extend the legs out long towards the top of the mat, coming into your Shavasana. Allowing the feet to roll out away from one another. Maybe shimmying the hips, little theme that's trickled throughout class. Maybe shimmy the hips side to side, allowing them to really settle, to open, to relax. We like to hold tension in this space. A lot of the movements we do day to day is moving the hips forward and back in one direction. So being able to explore that rotation a little bit more. To help release some of that really deep tension that we hold on to day to day. Let's keep that theme going, wiggle it out. Keep the hips nice and open. And feel free to keep your hands on your belly, on your chest. Keep the focus inward on our breath. Feel free to close your eyes or allow your gaze to soften. And directing that breath not only through the belly, through the rib cage, throughout the entirety of the lungs, but sending that breath to the deepest parts of your hips, your pelvis. Allowing all those points that are connected onto your mat, onto the earth right in this moment, allowing it to fall heavy. So sending that breath into any spaces that still feel like they're holding on to just even the smallest bit of tension. Acknowledge it, let it go. This is your time and space to relax fully and completely, knowing that no effort is required. And to remain in this space for at least 5 more breaths. 5 more breaths that are just for you and nobody else. So keeping those eyes closed, keeping the focus inward for these last few moments until you re-enter your day. As always, thank you so much for practicing with me and sharing this space. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day.